The reverse RMD retirement plan using the Wellington fund. All right, so we're going to get into this a little bit deeper here because the last video I did was just kind of some vomiting from my head without actually, and I had the numbers, but here I got on the whiteboard here. I can't wait, and my trusty PVC pipe. I'm stoked by this. So the Wellington, Retire on the Wellington Fund book will be coming out shortly, and then I'm going to do another one on just the S&P 500 with cash on the reverse RMD, and I might just do the S&P 500. We'll see how that shakes out, but I got to get this book out first. Look, I still like the Wellington. Don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. I've learned a lot in running these numbers. All right, so the premise is start with $100,000, and we're doing 5 different scenarios, 5 different times. All right, so we got 5% withdrawals adjusted with inflation, 4% withdrawals adjusted with inflation, 12% withdrawals, and every year we're reducing it. So 12% to 11.8 to 11.6. 10% every year we're reducing it. 10 to 9.8 to 9.6, 9.4. 8%, 7.8, 7.6, 7.4, so on. You see what we're doing here. All right. And then we're going in 1930 and 1931. That's the midst of the Great Depression. 1966, 1973, and then 2000. Why are we using, 1930s is pretty inherently obvious, I think. The beginning of the Great Depression in a deflationary 10 years, essentially, cycle there. 1966 and 1982, the market basically did nothing. Reinvest with dividends, it did do about, I guess the S&P 500 with the dividends reinvested like 3 to 4%. Actually, after inflation, you're basically breaking even or you're losing money. But basically, the market did nothing from those 1966 to 1982 times. 1966, we started with a 10% down, and then 1973, we started with down. It was down 48% or so, 1973 and 1974, with high inflation. So the years of the 1930s are bad market returns, low inflation. Years of 1960s and 1970s, bad market returns, high inflation. Then the aughts are bad market returns, low inflation. Again, if that makes sense. So the aughts are almost identical to the 2000s. It's actually pretty interesting. The 1930s. So the aughts in the 1930s have a lot of similarities there. And we don't have a full 30 years obviously from the aughts till to the end of 2019, but it gives us 20. All right, so this is exciting because we're showing something different here. We had the Wellington Fund, no barbell, just we got 100,000 in Wellington. What would have happened? And all I've done here is I've taken the average of everything. So the average income we would have taken was $170,000. All right, so if we took let's see, we got an average of, let me just show you how this works. Right. So we got 5% adjusted with inflation. The portfolio would have lasted on average 22.8 years. Now the max is 28 because we got 4 times 30 years. I hope this makes sense. We have 4 scenarios of 30 years, 1 scenario of 20. So we're trying to shoot for 30 years. That's what we're trying to shoot for. And we have then the odds is just 20 years. All right, so does that make sense? So if you had money, if you succeeded every single time, your success, you would have had money after 30, from 1930 to 1959, after 30 from 1931 to 1960, after 30 from 1966 to 2000 and 1966 to whatever, it's 30 years, 1966 to 1995. And then 30, 1973 to 2002, and then 20 from 2000 to 2019. So if you had money left over, you would have had average years of 28. That means you never ran out of money. And what we'll see here is in the 5% year, we ran out of money a couple of times, so our portfolio only lasted on average 22.8 years. Again, the total to be successful, we needed 28. So our portfolio, 22.8 divided by 28, 81% of the time, the portfolio lasted of these 5 scenarios, essentially. It was, just if that makes sense. So you can see we ran out of money a couple times here. Ran out of money 1 time here. So basically there's an 80% success rate or 22% or 20% failure rate. Here we probably got a 95% success rate or roughly 5% failure rate. And here we have 100% success rates, meaning we never ran out of money any of those times. All right. Now, the average we're able to take out in all these models were 7,095 in the 5% rule. So 7,095 or 6,853 in the 4% rule. So that doesn't seem that different, does it? So 70,000, 7,000. So basically, what's that? About $350 a month difference for a significant amount of time. But $350 a month, that's real money, man. So the average we're able to take out, again, I'm just using $100,000. Well, $350 a month back in 1930s. Is just, I hate when people say that. You're not including inflation. Yes, I am. I literally am including inflation. I'm just getting a base number of 100,000. 100,000 in 2000 is not the same as 100,000 in 1931. So you can always say, okay, it would have been 10,000. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. We're using the same numbers. Just stop with that. People always get up, like the two things people get upset about. You're not adjusting for healthcare. And you're not inflating it. I'm just using a broad 100,000 for a comparison. That's all we're doing. And if we had $100,000 in today's dollars, given all that we know about the performance from 1930, 1931, 1966, 1973, this is the end result. It's the exact same thing. All right. So anyway, we averaged $7,095 a year of distribution. So again, we had $100,000 to start with. We averaged $7,095 a year, which is basically a $7,000 distribution on the initial amount, but not on always. There's always 5% a year adjusted for inflation. Real inflation numbers too, by the way. And if you look at the S&P 500, the inflation numbers from the 30s, it was deflation. Now, a 4% rule, on the other hand, we averaged 68.53 a year. Right now, the drawback, of course, is the 4% rule lasted more often than the 5% rule, but they both did not last every time. They both ran out of money a couple. I think the 4% just once, the 5% 3 times. All right. So if we take $7,095 and we times it by how long it lasted, we'll just for simplicity say 23 times 7,095, we have essentially $170,000, if that makes sense. All right, so that's kind of where, that is the average amount. You okay? Come on. Good job. That's the average amount we're able to take from the portfolio in these 5 different retirement planning scenarios. I hope that makes sense. So we were able to take $170,000 out. Here we're able to average $182,000. So the 4% rule, we were able to average $12,000 more than we were the 5% rule. So we actually got more money and we had a safer portfolio. That's a fact. We got more money in a safer portfolio. We lasted for longer than the 5% rule, and thus we're able to have more money because when the 5% rule ran out, the 4% rule was still chugging along, paying us income. All right, so then how much we had left? In the 4% rule, not only did we take more money out, but we had $201,000 left in our portfolio. Again, that's on average that we had in remaining amount of how much was left in the portfolio on average. I'm looking for Pablo because he's bouncing back and forth. The 5% rule, we only had $80,000 left. All right, so you can see how that works. So you initially saying, well, we got more money, less risk, and we left more money in the 4% rule. The 4% is better. Watch out. The first 15 years on average, the 5% rule, we were able to take $93,000 out. The last 15 years, we're only able to average 76. And again, some of those years we ran out of money. So you got to be careful. But the first 15 years, we're able to take $93,000 out. Interesting. The latter part of the retirement, we dropped down to $73,000. Where the 4% rule did different is it had you taken less money on the front end and more money on the back end. That doesn't sound very attractive to me. So again, we're trying to last for 30 years. So if you retire at 60 and you say you're going to die at 90, from 60 to 75, the 4% rule, you're only able to take $72,000 out in that regard. With the 5% rule, you're able to take $21,000 out more, which is 21 divided by 72. That's 29%. We'll just round up, say 30% more in income in those first 15 years of retirement. What's more beneficial to you? Now, look at this. Here, you're taking a whole lot more. Here, you're taking 24, 34, 37,000 more, right? Or something like that. 33,000? Yeah, I guess about 33,000 more in the latter part of your retirement. Okay, are you enjoying it? I don't know. I mean, that does not sound like a good trade-off to me, frankly. So yes, you're able to take a lot more in the latter part. You're able to leave a lot more, and you took just a little bit more off the course of the entirety of it. But that doesn't have a whole lot of appeal to me right there. I'm sorry. That just doesn't leave me a good taste in my mouth. That I was able to take less out. I was able to take more out, left more. It was more safe or safer, but the latter part of my retirement was when I was able to take the bulk out. I don't like that. So again, you'd have to look at your own mindset. In the book, when I write it, I'll show you the very specifics on how this worked. I don't know if I have it over here or not. Yeah, let's see. So if we look at, let's see, 1931. If I got it here. Yeah, right here. I think 1931. The 4%, that's not going to show what I'm looking for. Yeah, okay. So 1931, at 1930, if we would have started the first, I can't tell what my numbers say here. Hold on just a second. 1930, if we would have started in the 4% rule, we took 51,000 out in the first 15 years, and then we took 88,000 out the next 15. In the 1930s, the 5% rule, we took 64,000 out in the first 15. Then we took 102,000 out until we ran out of money basically in the year 29. 1931, in the 4% rule, we took $53,000 out in the first 15 and $93,000 in the last 15. Whereas in the 5% rule, we took $66,000 out in the first 15 and $116,000 in the last 15. So in 1931, when we both survived, both these portfolios survived, the 4% rule left us $29,000 short, even though it left us a whole lot more money. And again, in my book, I'll get more in detail on that. 1966, we took $132,000 out in the first 15 years of the 5% rule, and then we ran out of money, which is the big bugaboo here. The 4% rule, we took $94,000 out in the first 15 and $91,000 in the second 15. So in 1931, the 5% rule is much better. 1966, the 4% rule was just because we ran out of money in year 15. Now, we did run out of money in the year, I think it's 20 or 21 in the 4% rule as well, before we just ran out. So 1973, the 4% rule, I hate to say 4% rule, the 4%, we took $115,000 out in the first 15 years and $217,000 in the next 15 years. 1973, we took $144,000 out in the first 15 years, and then we ran out of money after taking $94,000 out in the latter part. So you can see the 4% rule definitely saved us from running out of money twice, where the 5% rule did, but 4% rule still ran out of money one time, and then the 5% rule obviously ran out of money when the 4% rule did too. But then when the times were good, the 5% rule was just much better. So while the 4% rule gave us more conservative, where we didn't spend as much and we didn't have that same risk, we did leave a lot more, and we left a lot to be desired in the first 15 years. All right, so let's go to the reverse retirement. Now we got 12, 10, and 8. So in here we'll start with the 8. In the 8% rule, we averaged $5,980 a year. All right, that's what our average was. We left $250,000, or we never ran out of money. In the first 15 years, we averaged $76,000 a year. In the latter 15 years, we averaged $86,000. So here we left more in the 8%, where we're doing reversed RMDs, much more than anything else. Nothing comes close. It lasted the entirety of the time. We only took $17,000 left in the 4% rule. On an annual basis, we took $6,000. That took $6,800. So you can see that the 0.08 did actually a little bit better than the 4% rule, not on an annual basis, because we took more out in the first, especially in the first 10 years. The 5%, this right here in the first 10 years just dwarfs what these two guys do for sure. But the first 15 years, we still took out more than the 4% rule, even though we took out less in the latter part. But again, the last 15 years, I mean, look, we don't want to run out of money, but it seems to me the best is you want to get the money out front. This right here is probably my favorite. So here we took out $172,000, which other than the 4% rule beats all the other rules. 166, 165, 170. We average $6,200 a year, which starts at on the initial distribution with 6.22%. But again, we're taking $10,000 out of the initial distribution. We left a nice portfolio to the kids. It lasted the entirety of the time. And on the first look, you can see it's a good mix. On the first 15 years, we took $84,000 out. The latter part, the last 15 years, we took $85,000. So I like that a lot. So from an efficiencies perspective, there's two things going on. How much are we withdrawing and how much are we leaving? So from an efficiency perspective, how much we're leaving, if we're shooting for how much we're leaving, and again, I would say if you're shooting for leaving stuff, buy life insurance. This one right here is the best bet, the 8% reverse RMD. From a withdrawal perspective, the 4% rule is your best bet for sure. But the problem is we're leaving too much, right? And we're withdrawing, 182, we're withdrawing a lot, but the bulk of that is in the latter part of your retirement. That's not that efficient. So from an actual retirement plan, these two are not as efficient. They're just not. From a pure efficiency perspective, this is your best bet in terms of the safety. You never ran out of money. You took almost identical than what the 5% rule did, but you never ran out of money. $93,000 on the front end, just like the 5% rule. $72,000 you're still taking out, and here you're taking $76,000 out. You're only leaving $62,000 left, but you never ran out of money. Right? You took $166,000, which is the least of them all, but the bulk was in the first 15 years of your retirement. So if the premise is to enjoy the first 10 is actually the first 10 years, really. The first 10 years of your retirement, this is the way to go. If the premise is to secure everything at all costs, this is the way to go for sure. Actually, I even argued these two. If the premise is to leave the biggest amount to your savings to your kids, this is. So I actually vacillate between this and that right there. Because I think the 5% rule is the best bet in it grows with inflation, if that makes sense. And we're going to get into how these numbers shake out, 10, 15, 20 years as I write the book. But I tell you, man, I think at the end of the day, too little income, all right, you're leaving too much. So too little income, you're leaving too much. Good income, a good amount you're leaving. So we got too little, too much. Good. I'm never going to say too much, maybe too little, all right, and then too little here, all right? So we got good, too little, good, and too little, in my opinion. Here, we got too much, leaving. We got too much. It's still a little bit risky there, too little, and we're taking a good amount out. This is the most income we could take out. So that's good, too much. That's acceptable for sure. That's too little, and that's too much. Here, we're taking a decent amount out. Good. You could argue too little. I don't think so, actually. I think that's good. That's good. That's the too little. That's not quite safe enough. That's good, and that's fine with me. So I think the two best ones are this and this right here. And so we'll, again, when the book comes around, we'll dive into a lot deeper. But that's, man, how exciting is this? This is just a Wellington fund too. Now the drawback of the Wellington fund is a third of the portfolio is in bonds, and you're not getting the same yield on bonds as you did back then. So we'll have to look at this just with the S&P 500 and see how that shakes out too. All right, I'd love to hear your comments. See ya.